State House, Nairobi, Tuesday morning. President Jacob Zuma of South Africa is being received by his host, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Being the first time a sitting South African president is visiting Kenya, Zuma would be accorded the requisite honors given to a visiting head of state. A 21-gun salute. And the inspection of a guard of honor by the Kenya Air Force. After the formalities, it was time to get down to business, and both countries met behind closed doors for bilateral talks. 3 hours later, the two heads of state had agreed on several issues. And when they emerged for a briefing, a majority of Kenyans hoped they had arrived at a deal regarding South Africa relaxing its immigration rules. To the disappointment of many Kenyans, South Africa appeared non-committal on revising its immigration rules to grant Kenyans visa on arrival in South Africa, just like is the case for South Africa citizens visiting Kenya. President Kenyatta and President Zuma announced that South Africa had committed to look into the issue with no clear timelines given.
This is something that the South African government will look into, because this is a privilege that Kenya already extends to South African nationals coming to Kenya. In our view, there is no reason why both our governments cannot agree on exemptions of visas for each other's citizens.
Before we reach that stage, there are relations between countries like Kenya and South Africa. And that issue has featured in our discussion of how do we move forward between the two countries to allow the movement of goods and people to happen. Of course, we have to deal with a lot of things that the president called obstacles that we need to remove.
On Sunday, State House spokesperson Manoa Sipisu had announced that Kenyans seeking to do business in South African nations under the South African Development Community had sought President Kenyatta's intervention on the relaxation of immigration rules, terming them punitive.
You know that both countries, South Africa and Kenya, has a lot of foreigners who are in these two countries, some of whom could use that possibility for not good reasons. And therefore, those are matters that need to be looked at as we move forward.
But not all was lost as South Africa announced that it would invest in the LAPSET project, set to open up the Northern Corridor and ease the movement of commodities.
We also signed an agreement for South African investment in the development of the LAPSET Corridor, a pivotal project for Kenya, the region, and our continent. Investment in Africa by Africans is critical to the growth of inter-Africa trade and investment.
The two countries also agreed to deepen trade relations to address the exiting trade imbalance, with Kenya set to export tea and coffee to the land of Zulu.
Central to achieving this aim is taking a conscientious step to remove barriers to the movement of people, goods, and services.
Security cooperation between the two countries was also discussed in light of increased terror threat, as well as Kenya's regional placement among countries experiencing strife.
We urge the government of Burundi and people of Burundi to speed up the national dialogue, to step up the national dialogue process under the stewardship of the East African community. We condemn the recent call by the SPLM in opposition under Dr. Riek Machar for a popular armed resistance against the government in Juba.